Right, so the second question is to write a function that can accept any number and determine if it is greater than all numbers in a given list. Write code to test and demonstrate this functionality. So I want to take a bit of a different approach in how I answer these questions so that I can help you visualize problem solving in code. A few of you have mentioned that you struggle to know how to answer the question, okay? And it's very much the same like in maths, all right? Your question can be broken up into some parts, okay? So what are they looking for? We know that they want a function, which means that we're going to have the def keyword come in some way. I wonder why my pen is feeling so weird to write with. Def. Okay, so that can accept any number, all right, and determine if it is greater than all the numbers in a given list. So it wants to accept two things, okay? So let's call it is greater. We're going to make a function is greater. And it needs to accept, it needs two input, okay? It's going to take two input variables, a number and a list, all right? So I'm going to write here number and list, okay? Right. The function also has to do something, all right? It needs to determine if the number is greater than everything in the list. So this is the thing that it's doing, it's determining, it's evaluating, which means that ultimately it's going to return a result, okay? Because it has to perform an action. They also ask you to write code to test and demonstrate this functionality. Now we'll get to that in the second part, but the important thing to realize here is the testing. To test something usually means you're going to want the function to return a value. That's how you can test if it's true or false. Okay, but we'll get to that part in a bit. Let's first look at this section. Okay, so let's imagine we had a list of numbers like 4, 5, 7, 8. All right, this was the list of numbers we got. And then let's give ourselves a number like the number, I don't know, 3. All right, how would you check if 3 is the biggest number in that list? Okay, well, you'd want to maybe loop through the list and you want to compare 3 to each of these numbers each time. Because is 3, like, why would I think I'd loop through the list? Well, why don't you ask yourself, how would I tell if 3 is bigger than any number in this list? How would I do that? I'd say, is 3 bigger than 4? Is 3 bigger than 4? Okay, then that would be a true or false. In this case, it's a false. I'd ask myself, is 3 bigger than 5? 3 bigger than 5? False. Is 3 bigger than 7? False. Is 3 bigger than 8? False. Okay, what was I doing here? I was repeating an action the whole time. I kept asking if it was greater than, greater than, greater than, all right? And that's how I know this repetition is suggestive of the fact that I would use a loop, and the fact that I'm working with a list is suggestive of the fact that I would use a loop. Hence, using a loop. So let's go and call our function is greater. It's going to take in a number and it's going to take in some list, right? That we give it. We're going to give it some list. It can be any list. You could call it an input list. It doesn't matter. Right. Then what do we want to do? We want to check if the number is greater than the values in this list. And we just saw that we might want to do that using a loop, right? So we could say for item in some list. Okay. Now, here we kept asking ourselves if the number is bigger than that item. And ultimately the question is determine if it is greater than all the numbers. So we could ask ourselves a different question maybe. We could ask ourselves if it is smaller than one of these numbers. If it is smaller than one of those numbers, right? So if the number that we're given, let's just say, if this number that we are given is smaller than the item, okay, if it is smaller than the item, then I can return false, because immediately I know that no, it is not greater than all the numbers. I just had to find one instance where it was not greater than all the numbers. Okay, and that was me using reverse, like reverse reasoning in a way. You could have taken the approach where you say, if number is bigger than item. Okay, so here we're asking if the number is bigger than every single item, and if this evaluated to true, then we could return true, all right? But that would return true for the very first number that we get to. It would say, is 3 bigger than 4? Well, no, but imagine it was. It would say true, and it wouldn't check the rest of these items. Okay, so we could rather, again, check if it's smaller than. So if not this evaluation, so if false of that. If that's confusing to you, don't worry. Rather than just check if the number is smaller than that item, then return false, because it means that there's some number which is smaller than a number in this list. Remember, item is in some list. And that's one way to go about reasoning it. If you take it and you look at it with like pen and paper, and you'd say, what would I repeat? I'd repeat this action. Now, there's a shorter way to do it. There is a shorter way to do it, which uses a list method that we've seen before, and that list method is called max. So you could also say, all right, what if I get the max number? Okay, so if I call max on this list, okay, what is it going to do? This is a function which takes list as an argument, our list over here, and it's going to return the highest number in this list, which is 8. So it's going to return that. Max is a function, takes in a list, we give it this list here, and it would return the value 8. And what we want to do is check if the number, right, is bigger than the maximum number in that list, because we want to see that's greater than all the numbers in a given list. Okay, so instead of seeing just 8, we would say, okay, cool, is the number bigger than the max of list? Sorry, right? How can we just say that? Why can we do that? Because we know that max is a function that gives us the maximum number in a list. It returns that value. So we want to say, is number bigger than whatever value is going to be returned by this function? Right? In this instance, it's 8. So then this would look even shorter, where we wouldn't have, we wouldn't do this loop approach. We would rather say, if the number is greater than the max of the list that we've got, some list, okay, if it is, then we can return true. Means we've found, we've compared this number to the biggest possible number in this list. If it's bigger, it means it's bigger than all of the numbers in that list. Return true. Else, if it wasn't, then it must be false. It must be that it's not greater. Is greater would be false, because number would be not be the biggest in this list. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, that is the first part of our question done. Write a function. We wrote it that accepts a number. There it is. And a list of numbers. There's it. And then it checks if this number is greater than all of the numbers in that list. There's it. Done. Then they ask you to write code to test and demonstrate this functionality. Don't be confused, people. Don't be overwhelmed. It's all good in the hood. All that we had to do was use the function that we just wrote. There's it. Very simple. So here we could say this is our first test, all right? And we would do the following. Now, this function that we just wrote returns a Boolean value. It's either true or it's false. What makes use of a Boolean value to execute? An if statement. Very, very simple. So, well, that was not 5, but if, now we can call our function is greater, and we're going to give it its input arguments, like the number 4 and 5, 7, 8, 9. Okay, this it. If this thing returns true, right, it means that the if condition, the if statement that we're writing would execute, because this inner part evaluates to true. So what do we want to say? Well, then we want to say print, and here we can, you haven't, I don't know if you've learned about this part in strings yet. No, wait, I don't think you have. Anyway, let's rather just make it simple. Print test 1, 4 is greater than, here, and here I'm just going to copy and paste this. Copy, pasta. Alright. Okay. Else, I can then print that it is not greater than. Is not the greatest out of that. Alright. And I'm going to write another test. So I expect test 1 to print out the second part. And in fact, I can say here expected, just to make sure I know that that's actually what I expect, because 4 is not the biggest number in that list. Here I can say test 2. Okay, so test 2, and then here I want to say evaluate 9, and this one I want to actually be the biggest number in the list. So let's say I put in a 5 over there. Now I put in 5 twice, put in a 4. Okay, there's it, 4. And here test 2, and I'm actually looking for 9, and this is the one. This is the results I'm gonna expect. So I'm gonna write here expected. Let me run it. Ah, voila! Both of the ones that I expected are the ones that came out. Done, 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 done and dusted. There's it, people. Not difficult.